What if I told you that choosing the perfect colour or spending countless hours adding details to your drawings doesn't actually make it look more realistic? There are quicker and easier ways to make your artwork look more realistic. I actually spend less than 5 hours on most of my artwork, and I'm going to share the tips that I have for creating realistic drawings in a shorter amount of time than you might think. The first thing that you need to do is make sure that your initial outline is accurate. It doesn't matter how much time you spend on your drawing if your proportions are off. It just won't look as realistic. There are a few ways that you can get an accurate outline, such as using the grid method, tracing, freehand, or using a projector. One of my favorite ways to get an accurate outline, no matter what medium you're working with or what kind of paper you're working on, is the transfer method. All you need to do for this is to print out your reference photo to the same size as your drawing, or do your freehanding or grid method on a separate piece of paper, and then turn over your printout or outline, rub some pastel, charcoal, or graphite on the back, depending on what medium you're working with, and then place it the right way up on your drawing surface and trace over those lines. This will imprint the pastel from the back onto your drawing surface. Most people think that if they knew what colours to use, their artwork is going to look more realistic. If they had the perfect shade of orange for a tiger or the perfect skin colour, and then it will look realistic, when that's not the case at all. I could take a photo of the same person in different kind of lighting, and I'm going to use a completely different set of colours for that. You could also edit a photo with different filters, and they're all still going to look realistic, but you're going to choose different colours depending on the filter that you used. In these examples, my artwork is on the right, and the reference photo is on the left. I actually add quite a lot of colours in my work that are not in my reference photos, and I do exaggerate those blues and purples quite a bit and alter the colours depending on what I want my own piece to look like. So your colour choices are really not as important as you think they might be. For example, it really doesn't matter that much which blue you pick, as long as you're not picking a colour that is too dark or too light in comparison to that area of your reference photo. It doesn't have to be the perfect colour blue. People also think that if they add every tiny detail onto their artwork, then it will end up making it look more realistic. Having super tiny details or choosing the perfect colour is not going to make your artwork look more realistic unless you have your values correct. And by values, I'm talking about the shadows and the highlights and everything in between. This is going to be where you can save hours of time on your artwork without compromising how realistic it looks. The average time that I spend on my artwork is about 2 to 3 hours, and they still look realistic from a normal viewing distance, and it's because of this reason. A lot of people tend to not have their dark areas dark enough, whether they're scared to go too dark or they just don't realize they're not going dark enough. In these examples of my own drawings, my original drawing is on the right, and I've just lightened the dark areas on the left side to show you the difference it makes if your values are not correct. The drawings that are on the right look more 3D and they really pop off the page, and the only thing that's different is how dark the dark areas are. If you look at those really beautiful paintings in museums and art galleries, they look realistic from a normal viewing distance, but when you get closer, all you can see are brushstrokes and colours. There's really not a lot of detail at all, but when you step back, it looks realistic because of those values and proportions being correct. And then you can apply this theory to your own artwork and take a few steps back every now and then just to check if the detail that you're adding is actually visible from a normal viewing distance. And if it's not, and then it may not need to be there. I also believe that having some pencil strokes show through helps make your artwork look more interesting, and it shows a little bit more of your artistic style. A good way to check if your values are correct is to actually take a picture of your artwork and turn it into black and white and compare it side by side with a black and white version of your reference photo. By removing the color aspect, that's going to help you see if your dark areas are dark enough and your highlights are light enough. You can also take it one step further and then crop certain sections to look at closely together. For example, if I'm working on a human portrait, which I find a lot more difficult than other subjects, I will do this value comparison halfway through and then crop my reference photo and artwork side by side to areas like the eye or the mouth or the nose so that I can pair them closely side by side. I will also do the same comparison when I think I am finished with my artwork, just to check that my values are right before I call it finished. If you focus on getting your initial outline and your values correct, rather than adding hours worth of details and worrying about your color choices, you can create some really realistic drawings in much less time. The tutorial in the top left corner is a great example of using exaggerated and not necessarily realistic looking colors to create a realistic drawing of a horse. So click on that and I'll see you over there.